as a nation, are we saving enough for our retirement to live comfortably? I think people in this room, so we say yes, we are as individuals, but the large proportion of the UK, I think the answer is no, and a lot of them are blissfully unaware of it as well. So the next 20 minutes or so, we'll look at this subject, of trying to highlight some key areas and think about what we can do as a nation to try and solve this problem. So firstly, what amount of income is needed in retirement? And Fidelity have something called a retirement savings guide, and their assessment is that for some people to actually have to replace around about 55 to 85% of their pre-retirement income when they stop working will allow them to maintain their current sort of lifestyle in retirement. And that fits in then quite nicely maybe with the old regimes we used to have in place, the old final salary schemes, where for every year of service you maybe get a 60th of your benefits of your final salary. So 40-60 is two-thirds. You get two-thirds of your final salary upon retirement, add on the state pension as well, and that takes you nicely within that bracket. But again, two red flags straight away: the decline of DB schemes. Again, we know that's happening. And also the state pension. It provides a basic amount, but again, how sustainable is this in the longer term? How much income do we actually need in retirement? Loughborough University and the Pensions and Lifetime Savings Association did some research and a survey in relation to this, and so this is the key part of it. And what they've done is they've looked at living standards and put them into three different sort of criteria: minimum, moderate, and comfortable. And for a minimum one, that really is the bare minimum. They're saying you have around about £50 a week for food, enough money for a short break in the UK, maybe once a year, around about £600 for clothing, and this assumes this person works full-time till age 67 and has a full national insurance record and has paid off their mortgage. But we know lots of people in this category actually don't own their own homes and we're paying rent in retirement. So when you look at the right-hand side there, showing what income then you actually need in retirement, say in the single person, 12,800, or a couple shy of £20,000. If you haven't got your own property, then those numbers will be higher. And what this survey has done, or research has done and looked at, it says that the population of the UK, those currently in retirement and those targeting retirement, around about 70% are in this category, which is quite frightening, really. The next two criteria, you've got moderate and comfortable, so obviously they're better. So the moderate one, you've got £75 a week for food, second-hand car changed every 10 years, 2-week holiday, etc., etc. And you can see the incomes you need there for a single person or for a couple. And again, about 1/5 of the population are either in that or targeting that for retirement. And lastly, the more luxurious one, you get about £150 a week for food, change your car regularly, go on holiday abroad, 3 weeks a year, have about £1,500 for clothing and food. And again, it shows you there then for a single person, around about £37,000 a year, and for a couple, around about £55,000, and only 8% of the population are actually sort of targeting that or actually in that bracket. And then you look at some research done by the People's Pension, one of the large master trusts in the UK, and they said that around about half of UK adults believe they'll be carry on working when they reach state pension age, and around about 7% believe that they'll never be able to fully retire, again, which is quite stark, really, those numbers and those comments. So that looks at the income you need. So how are you going to get to that income? Well, you've got the state pension. So these numbers here assume that someone gets the full state pension. Assume they get the full state pension at retirement, which isn't going to be the case for everyone. What it's saying is then, for the minimum criteria, to get the £12,800 per annum, that person will have to save up an additional £36,500 on top of getting the full state pension. And then for a couple, if they both get the full state pension, again, they don't need any extra income. But as you can see, though, as you move down the criteria, the amount of money you need just goes up drastically, really increases by huge amounts. And again, these all assume as well that individuals are retiring at age 67. That's not the case. People retire earlier as well. So retire earlier, again, you're going to get more money put away for retirement. And again, a comment at the bottom here, the Phoenix Group, again, another large pension provider in the UK, has said that in the UK, around about a quarter of the population has said they won't have enough money when they come to retire to live on. And in Wales, that's even higher, 28%, and the South West a little bit lower. But again, it's real stark numbers there, People just haven't got enough to save for retirement. So what are the means for saving for retirement? Well, obviously, we talked about the state pension, which we'll come on to in a moment. And you've got pension arrangements, you've got occupational schemes, personal arrangements, different types of defined benefit, DC, etc., etc. But outside those, people can save for ISAs. So actually, they put many ISAs every year. Property, they can buy more property and obviously then have rental income. Or most more commonly, people downsize their property at retirement and use that capital then to provide them with their income when they finish work, maybe relying on inheritance from relatives or other savings and investments. Lots of different ways of doing it, but no doubt the state pension and pension arrangements are the main feeder for your income in retirement. So to the state pension. So the state pension, just a reminder how it works, it's a pay-as-you-go system. So we pay national insurance at the moment, but the national insurance that we pay goes to pay the current people receiving state pension. So when we come to retire, we're going to have to hope that there are people paying national insurance for us to receive our state pension. And in the UK, like many Western societies, the workers to pensions ratio is diminishing as people are living longer and longer. So in my view, I think the state pension to remain sustainable in its current form, or sort of similar to its current form, that state pension age will have to carry on increasing, getting higher and higher and higher. Or maybe that £10,600 we get will have to be reduced slightly to make it more affordable for everyone, for the government. Or maybe an increase in national insurance and taxes, or maybe a combination of all three. But what it tells me and tells people really is that the state pension can be changed by the government at any time. So it's very, very crucial that people save individually as well by via their occupational schemes or personal pensions to ensure they can have that decent level of income in retirement. But the key thing is, though, are individuals aware of this, and then do they know how much they need to save? So now we're going to quickly look at the occupational sector and something called the Purple Book. The Purple Book is an annual assessment done by the Pension Protection Fund. In the early days, it's also done by the regulator as well. And what I've got is numbers from 2007, when the book was roughly first published, 15 years later, the most recent update, 2022. And there's some key numbers there. Obviously, the one number is we know defined benefit schemes are within the universe are dwindling as they're wound up or go into the Pension Protection Fund. But the key numbers I want to draw out really here is the number of schemes open to new entrants. So back in 2007, around about 36% of these schemes were open to new entrants. Now, it's only 10%. 10% of these schemes are open to new entrants. And actually looking at those that are still allowing people to build up benefits, back in 2007, only 18% of these schemes were closed to accrual. So people were still building up benefits in the majority of these schemes. Now, over half these schemes are closed to accrual. And then actually, when you look at the numbers, back in 2007, around about 2.7 million people were accruing benefits in these schemes. It's now down to under 1 million, so really a drop of £2 million. Again, it really is a sort of a huge drop because these schemes, defined benefit schemes, are no doubt the gold standard for individuals when it comes to saving for retirement. Now, the public sector, though, that's slightly different because, again, that would really be no big changes, and there are 6 million people currently accruing defined benefits in the public sector. And this next graph here is prepared by the Office for National Statistics, the ONS, and it shows you statistics at 2012 and 2021. And the top two bars there are the public sector, and the dark blue is defined benefit schemes. And you can see over the last 9 years, the number of people in defined benefit schemes in the public sector has increased slightly, and it's a large proportion of that workforce. The next two are the private sector, 2012 and 2021, and you can see the dark blue boxes are very, very small and got even smaller. So again, it's very much a two-tiered system when it comes to pensions in the UK. You've got the public sector and the private sector. But one thing you can note in the private sector is this lighter blue box, which is occupational defined contribution schemes. And you can see over the last 9 years, there's been a huge increase in that. And the reason why it's increased, obviously, is auto-enrolment. Now, auto-enrolment was introduced in 2012. And as a reminder, anyone who earns above £10,000 a year is age 22 or over, or in state pension age, will automatically get put into an employer's pension scheme where the employer has to pay 3% and the employee pays 5%. You've got 8% going in, and contributions are generally paid after earnings are above £6,200 per annum at the moment. So that's the way the auto-enrolment regime was brought in back in 2012. Now, so some of you may have forgotten about this, but in 2017, they actually did a review of where we are. And unfortunately, none of these sort of actions that were highlighted have yet to be actioned. But the good news is, though, there's a private members' bill going through Parliament at the moment, which will go through in autumn, and hopefully it's going to make some changes to the auto-enrolment regime. And there's going to be two big changes. The first one is that on the first pound of earnings, contributions will be deducted, both the employee and the employer, rather than having this sort of cap at the moment whereby only earnings above 6,240, but you start having contributions deducted. And another big change is the age of actually being auto-enrolled is being reduced from 22 to age 18. Some good news here, and the government has said it's going to impact over 3 million workers, with over 500,000 18 to 21-year-olds joining up for a pension when it comes in. And apparently I was quite surprised by this, but apparently 86% of students actually then supported these changes as well of younger people going into the pension. And again, as we'll see later on, that's such an important thing. People starting to save earlier will help them over the longer term. And again, another one on auto-enrolment, just looking at how well it's worked. So this green line here, again, another graph from the ONS, shows you the proportion of the population in a pension scheme. And you can see before 2012, it's around about 50% or so. And after 2012, when auto-enrolment started being brought in, you can see a huge increase going up due to the staging dates with different employers putting people in. And so now we're around about 80% of the population are in a workplace pension scheme, which represents around about 20 million people, which is really, really good news. So obviously auto-enrolment has worked. It has worked, and it's helped the UK in relation to pension saving, but still a lot more needs to be done about it. So we've heard about those earlier changes that are hopefully going to come into force shortly, but what else can be done? Well, currently, you've got to earn above £10,000 to be auto-enrolled. That should be maybe be scrapped completely, and everyone can join these. So obviously, it's targeting the lower earners, and those lower earners, the ones in that first sort of table we're looking at, of being in that very poor lifestyle, they're the ones we really need to target as a nation. Also, the self-employed as well. Self-employed currently have no provision for benefits themselves. Again, having something with them automatically is a good thing to do. And also the gender gap needs to be addressed. Again, the statistics I saw that, in retirement, an average man has a 35% better income than a female. Again, that's not right, and that needs to be addressed. But the thing that really needs to be sorted out is the contributions. Only 8% going in at the moment in total, and that needs to be increased. And by that increasing, that will mean that people get better retirement outcomes when they come to retire. So what can we do to maybe help the situation, improve the situation? Well, maybe we should starting right at a very young age and having financial education in schools, encouraging younger people to understand about the importance of saving just generally in life, but also for pension as well, and how they go about it. Then that should then carry on when we're working in employment. I think the employer should be doing a lot more, helping the workforce to be educated, understand their pension arrangements, how it works, and how good it is and what they can do to impact a better outcome for themselves. And also being supported by other organisations, and I'll come on to that in a moment. And then lastly, then, at the bottom there, you've got the dashboard. This dashboard has been talked about so many times, and I know, Chris, is something you've been involved in heavily with Quantum. And again, the dashboard is there, and it would show people all their pension arrangements they've got, including the state pension, and what they're going to get at retirement. And I think that's just a powerful tool to make people aware of the fact they need to save more. But again, this has been delayed, which isn't good news. And lastly, on this slide here, I've got a quote from Hargreaves and Lansdowne. You can see that they're saying that around about a fifth of workers wish they started their retirement planning earlier, because in defined contribution schemes, the way they work is the earlier you start, the more benefit you get from the compound interest nature of the returns you can get, and the bigger benefits you'll get. So again, by starting financial education in schools and employers carrying it on, then hopefully people will start sooner. And obviously we've got that new legislation coming in, 18-year-olds again. So there are some good things being done out there. It's not all doom and gloom. And what about, explaining pensions to people? Again, it's something I do quite regularly. I go out there to employers and to workforces and explaining pensions and how they work. And you've got to highlight some of the good news. And the good news is that you get automatic tax relief and contributions. So if people pay into pensions, it costs them a lot less than they think. And also when they get the money out, a quarter of it's tax-free. Again, so it's a very, very tax-efficient way to save. And also, if they pay contributions by salary sacrifice, they can get national insurance relief on it as well. And by being in a workplace pension scheme, they get free money from their employer. The employer's putting money into the pension, which they wouldn't get otherwise. The only drawback with pension arrangements is you can't take your money out until 55, which is increasing to 57 in a few years' time. But again, it's there to provide you with an income at retirement. I mentioned earlier on about some other organisations. There are some good things in place. Very recently, something called the Midlife MOT website was introduced, and it's targeting 14, 50-year-olds to help them to plan for later life. And there's some good financial tools in there. It's been developed by the Department of Work and Pensions. You've also got the Pensions Advice Allowance, which allows individuals to take money out of their DC pension pot to actually get financial advice, to make sure they're doing the right things for themselves. And also you've got Pensions Wise, it's now part of MAPS, again, helping people with guidance when they come to retire about what their best decisions are. Again, that's free for people to do that. And then we mentioned the pensions dashboard on the right-hand side there. But really, when it comes to communicating with people, simple, easy to use, so they can make sure they can make informed decisions. And maybe something as an industry, we may be been a bit too lax in that area in the past, and something we certainly need to up our game on. So I think the key thing, though, is getting the amount invested increased. And so, how can we do that? Well, you can get people putting more money in themselves, and that's, when you've got them talking, going there, doing education, awareness sessions, basically, getting them to understand the impact of putting more in and the impact it will have on their retirement outcome. On the right-hand side there, salary sacrifice for employee pension contributions. If you do it that way, employees get national insurance relief, as does the employer, and again, that can be pumped into pensions as well. But again, it's surprising the number of employers that actually don't do this at the moment. They don't do this, and again, why didn't the government just say, okay, we'll do it automatically. All contributions paid by individuals, you get tax relief and national insurance relief. That could mean then more could go into pension schemes. On the bottom left-hand side there, higher tax relief for employee pension contributions. So if you look down here, a survey from Money Age showed that recently, people earning more than £50,000 per annum were actually increasing their contributions in the pension scheme, but those earning below that weren't doing that. And again, I think it's key that, the people on that sort of income aren't people we want to be targeting. It's the lower income people we want to be targeting. And so, again, quite a radical thought, but why don't we just have, a flat rate tax relief and pension contributions for everyone of 30%? And that would mean it would benefit those lower earners. They could get more going into their pension, again, and help them up their game and get a better outcome in retirement. And then lastly, on the right-hand side there, getting employers to increase their rates. Employers only have to pay a bare minimum of 3%. Many employers pay more than that. But again, it's something I think the government needs to look about, and maybe it's a difficult decision. But as we'll see in a moment, other countries are doing this and have done this. So what else can help in this whole situation? Maybe it's wishful thinking, but defined benefit schemes for sure give people the best outcome. But obviously on the rapid decline, the costs of running them, the risk to employers. But maybe they can be simplified. There are already versions out there. Maybe we have a low defined benefits accrual and maybe defined contribution on top, or maybe some sort of cash balance scheme as well. There's something out there that can give people a bit more guarantee and a bit more security in retirement. But the one I want to really concentrate on is something called collected defined contribution, or CDC schemes. So they're relatively new, and you hear people talked about it in the marketplace and within the industry, and so far really haven't really moved into the mainstream. What are these schemes? Well, they're like defined contribution schemes whereby members and employers put money into them, but rather than individuals having their own pooled, their own individual account, all the money is pooled into one big investment arrangement, and so the longevity and investment risks are shared. And what that can mean is that then individuals can actually then maybe get a better outcome at retirement. If you think about the way defined contribution schemes work, is that when you're younger, you're in growth assets, but then as you get closer to retirement, you move into safer assets to protect you, and that really stunts the growth at the latter part of your life cycle in retirement schemes. These schemes will allow the scheme to invest more aggressively in funds and assets, and hopefully allow people to get better outcomes in investments as well, and then a bigger income at retirement. And the last bullet point there, well, it sort of fits on quite nicely with Paul's talk about the Mansion House speech. Again, with these bigger incomes as well, it will allow them to invest in things like private markets or private equities and things like that as well, again, which is something that the UK as a whole is keen to do. And finally, these schemes as well can be used in the defined contribution market. When you come to retire from a DC scheme, what can you get? An annuity, you run into an insurance company, but the rates you get are very, very poor, but you get your guaranteed income. Or you can do drawdown, keep your money invested, draw down on it, but you can run out of it. Again, I think the CDC would allow you to get a guaranteed income. That can be variable, but again, would give you that security in retirement and know you're going to get something for the rest of your life while you're retiring. And what about other countries? So Mercer do a global pensions index. So before I go on, any clever clogs in the room who can name those 4 countries from those flags? There'll be so much shorter. So the left-hand side one is Iceland. That one is Holland, yeah. That one is Denmark. And that one is Israel, yeah. So this global index ranks countries in order what they think is the best pension arrangements. And if you look at Iceland, they predominantly have a DC regime, and it's mandatory for all workers aged between 16 and 70 to be in one of these schemes, and the employee rate is 4, and the employer rate is 11.5%. You can see a lot higher than the UK. In the Netherlands, you can see they've got a large proportion of DG, defined benefits, which are care schemes, the average earning schemes, and they're targeting 70% of final pay. It's a large part of their retirement product. In Denmark, we just talked about CDC schemes. Again, you look at what they've got in place, and again, they're very prevalent in that country. And then lastly, on the right-hand side, you've got Israel. Again, they've got a DC regime, and again, you can see the rates that the employees and employers pay are a lot higher than we paid in the UK. So it's definitely telling me that, in the UK, we need to be upping our game in relation to contributions and maybe thinking about CDC as well to make sure we can provide people with a good income in retirement. So my final thoughts really is, is the state pension sustainable in its current form? It provides everyone with that basic level of income, and it's very reliant on the lower earners, but again, is it sustainable? And, what are going to be the changes in the future in relation to that? There's a huge divide between the private sector and the public sector getting bigger. But I suppose the question is, will public sector pension schemes stay as they are, or will they be diluted in the future? Basically, they're being backed by taxpayers. And as we've seen, really, not enough is being paid into defined contribution private sector arrangements. But, it's not all doom and gloom. We've got 20 million people now in workplace pension schemes. Auto-enrollment's a good start, so let's expand on it. And I think the key thing really is the fact that, we need to put resources in to make sure we can do things for the lower paid, and to also try and get contributions into these schemes increased even more. Obviously, maybe CDC appear to be a good halfway house between DB and DC, and maybe that will then come to the forth more in the future and help us as a nation up our game in relation to pensions. So these really are just all my thoughts, and so it's all doom and gloom. It seems like that, but we've got time to do things. We've got time to get things right. But if we don't, some of these statistics I talked about earlier on are only going to get worse, really. So these are my views, but obviously I'd be happy to take any questions and maybe hear about your views about what we should be doing. Any thoughts? Tess?
So I think one of the issues that we've got, particularly in the DC space, is multiple pots. So people have anywhere between 7 and 11 pots, and each one of those tends to be quite small, so people forget about it. It's not a big amount of money. You've got double authentication, so actually logging in to see how much it is really hard. And even at retirement, it encourages the wrong behaviour, so people are cashing out lots of different pots as opposed to consolidating and doing something smarter. So what do you think about pot follows member? Do you think they're actually going to get it through?
I think it's a good idea, isn't it? As you say, then when it then comes to retirement as well, you've got a bigger amount of money and you do more things with it. And I do think it's a good idea, and I hope it's something that does happen. But again, you've just seen these things with the dashboard, how long things take to get put into place. But I think it's a really good idea. And you're right, these days, I think I read somewhere as well that the average person maybe has about 10, 11 different jobs in their lifetime. They have different small pots. So by doing something like that, I think is a good idea. But it's making sure you've got the mechanisms in place to do that. I think it's a really good thought. Thank you. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Stuart. Do you see employers becoming more engaged with DC pensions, wanting to sort of speak to their employees more about it, wanting to pay more, or do you think the government's going to have to mandate these kind of contributions?
I find, some employers out there, pensions are just a pain in the bum. It's an extra cost, extra burden. It's just something they have to do. But there are a lot of employers out there, though, who are opportunistic and like looking after their staff, and that's what we do. We go in there, and they're quite, want to look after people and to make sure they understand the way the pension works. And I think, again, it's on employers to do that, but maybe I think that, the government will maybe have to legislate around that and maybe enforce employers to do a bit more around that. I can't see all employers doing that. But again, something I enjoy doing is going to workforces, talking to them about pensions. I come away, and some of them are going to pay more into their pension. Some employer schemes have matching contributions whereby the employee pays more, the employer pays more, and they don't understand that, are not aware of that. And by paying a little bit more, it doesn't cost them that much, it make a huge difference to their retirement. So I totally agree. Yeah. Any other questions? Hi, Donna.
Just a thought really for me. We're trying, I think as a nation, we're trying to get people to start paying into pension at a time when their focus is something very different. It's, I want to move out, I want a property of my own, I want a house. I think as employers, there must be something we can do out as a country to look at total benefits and say, how can we give both? How can we encourage pension savers but support them in the one thing that's important to them? Usually at that time is moving out and getting a place of their own. And that's what we're battling.
You're right, it's also conflict. You're right, the younger generation have got different demands on their income, and you're right, when people are older, maybe their children have left university, and they've got a mortgage, and they can put money into the pension scheme, which is great. But if they can start earlier, it has a bigger impact, really. You're right, it's getting their message out, and there's no real answer to that, really, is it? It's a very difficult one to grapple with, really. But if you can explain to people, at least give them the information, they can then make that an informed choice themselves, really, I think. Yeah. Any other questions? No?
The map you showed us about earnings
Yeah.
and how much you need to have in a
Yes.
pension, there's one from Which as well, which they published last month. It shows the figures reasonably, I wouldn't say considerably smaller, but they are smaller. And I wonder whether location comes into that. You know, Loughborough where it is.
It does. I think they said on that, I think the London numbers were even higher, but you're right, it's just a UK average in different locations, different areas. You're right, there, Donna, definitely. Those numbers will change as well, for sure. Yes.
Which one says, I think, to be comfortable, you need to put more like 38 than
Yes.
52.
Yes.
Just to put some
Context into it, yes.
perspective on that.
Thank you. Sarah.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks for an interesting presentation. Really interested in that division between the public sector and the private sector in pension
Yeah.
division, and you were saying that the gap was more opening. I was just wondering if there was anything the government was looking at that perspective, because that's also, as you said, quite a big cost to the taxpayers. So one can see there's several dynamics going on there. I was just interested if that was in the two difficult boxes.
I think it is. I think at the moment, they did a big review, and obviously changes to public sector schemes came in 2015, and obviously those changes now deemed to be age discrimination, and they're having to rewind on that, and it's going to cost them more. But I think at the moment it's a too difficult box. But I think eventually they're going to have to address that. I think really.
Structurally, that's difficult to sustain.
It is really, yes. It is really, yes. But I suppose then, in the flip side, people will say in the public sector we get paid less than the private sector, so that's what maybe our added benefit really as well. The argument there. Yeah. Any more questions? Nope. Okay, well, thank you very much for today and for attending, and thank you again to Chris and Paul for speaking. So, hope you enjoyed the session. And, feel free to stay around now, put some more coffee, more food, have a chat, really. And again, we'll be back here again at the end of this year, maybe November time. So hopefully see you again then soon. So, but until then, have a good day and see you all soon.